This is a global slit lamp manufactured by Keeler, and this one has a Marco label on it. And I'm just going to give a overview of things that you might have to do to it. As you see here, I have this cover off of this prism assembly, and this will come off, and I have the prism cover off by 2 screws. Got the filter on it, and has a ring on it underneath. This ring can be removed by 2 small Allens. And underneath, on top of here, you can adjust your prism to go one way or the other, up or down, by, there's some Allen screws up here, and when you have your focus rod in place as you're looking through your view, you can move this prism a lot of different ways to get it centered. Now on your head, some have a screw with a knob, but this one only has an Allen, and you'd have to loosen the Allen wrench to adjust the focus of your light on your test bar. If you had to move it one way or the other a whole lot, then you would probably have to slide this out and move the mount. You can't really move the mount one way or the other up here. You would have to take it off and loosen the screws under there and turn it, but you shouldn't have to do that. But if it ever got bumped, you might have to straighten it out so you get the same amount of space on each side of your bar as you're looking through your view. But this is the focus, and then here's a little stop. Once you've gotten a nice crisp light and image, then you can, and it focuses on at 0, then you can tighten that screw if you loosened it, and then you can adjust this screw whichever way it needed to go, so that the next time it's put in place, it would stop right there. Now underneath this cover that's on here, you have 2 screws, and they hold your condensing lenses. You have a condensing lens up here underneath this prism, and you have another condensing lens down here. And on this one, unfortunately, the condensing lens up here unscrewed and fell off, and so we were unable to get a sharp line on here because the light was wrong. The lenses weren't right, and so your light wasn't very sharp. So I had to put that lens back in, and then this other condensing lens can move up or down. It shouldn't have to. From the factory, it's supposed to be sharp, but if someone has messed with it, this one is going to be stable, but this one can move, and you can move it, loosen the screw and move it up or down gently while you're looking through, and see as you're closing your slit, you can see when you have the sharpest, cleanest slit by the light, by moving this other condensing lens up or down, and once you have it, then you can tighten it. But you shouldn't have to go in here. The only reason we did was because the lens in here had unscrewed and fell off, and it was all wrong. Now, if your slits aren't closing all the way, you know, if there's a gap one side or the other, well, the only way to get to the slits are you're going to have to go underneath, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But if you just needed to get like to clean your filters, you would have to take these knobs off by taking off the covers and then holding it with something, and then loosening the Phillips just a little bit to remove your knobs, and then you could take this Allen screw out, and then you could take the whole half off, and you can have access to your filters and your diaphragms. You can have access to those, to clean them, blow them out, whatever way, and then when you're putting the cover back on, tighten that, and remember to put a little space between your knob and your cover when you're reattaching your knobs. Use something to create a little space between your knobs and your cover so that it doesn't rub. Now, if you needed to get to the slits, well, you're going to have to take off this assembly, and you have a snap ring up here that needs to be taken out. And then in here you have an Allen screw, a spring, and a bearing. They've got all these things inside here. That's to, I guess, create tension so that if the doctor prefers just slight movement. But if they're not there, if you don't have the spring and the bearing in there, it's still going to move freely. But you would have to remove it, you're going to have to get these out. You have to remove the spring, and the bearing will probably fall out once you lift it up. But it's not that simple. But this one, those things are already removed. So you would have to remove this screw on this wire harness right here, and then you have a cover. It's got 3 screws in it that covers the LED light assembly. And then underneath here there are 2 Allen screws, big ones. If you loosen those, well, you'd have to take them all the way out, and then you could open up, pull this bottom support off, and then you would have access to your slits, and you could close them all the way by turning your knob, and then maybe just loosen one, turn your diaphragm to where you have access to the screws on your slits, and maybe just loosen one, and with the slits all the way closed, and then put your needle nose pliers in there and try to pull, tighten, squeeze those slits tight, and then tighten the screw up and see if that closed the slit. You could hook the power back up and see if you did correct the little skewing of the slits, or you could shine a light through the opposite end of the prism and look through to see if you did indeed were able to close the slits. But unfortunately, it's a little difficult, but it can be done. And once you have all that, then you can put it all back together. If you need to replace the LED assembly, it's right here. These two screws, pull that out and replace it. And then put it back together, put your screws in, put your cover on, attach your wire harness, and put it back into place. Put your bearing, your spring, and your Allen screw back in. And reattach your snap ring on the shaft. So those are just some overviews that you might have to deal with, and if you were curious about how to get to any of that, well, that might give you a starting point to address those issues. So I hope that's helpful to you and a good reminder to me. I don't know a lot about these, but I'm learning, and so I'm probably going to be reviewing this video to see, oh yeah, that's what I got to do. Okay. If you're having a little trouble getting your light assembly to go back down all the way, it's quite possible that the pin on the lock is sticking out. There's a pin that operates this cam that has to be in all the way so that your bushing can go all the way down. So push it, turn your knob until you can push that pin back in, that locking pin, and then you'll be able to slide your assembly all the way down far enough to get your snap ring back on. And also, when you're putting your cables back on, be sure to line up your holes with the pins on the plugs. You could damage them by trying to force it on the wrong way, and the same way with this plug coming underneath. If care is not taken as far as putting it exactly back on according to the pin configuration, you can bend the pins on the plug and then it not make good contact, and it won't screw in all the way. So just be careful about those delicate things too.